In the peaceful town of Maplewood, North Carolina, Jack Wilson had everything a man could wish for. At 38 years old, Jack was a well-built, 6 feet 2 inches figure, respected and admired by everyone who knew him. His success as a regional manager for a logistics company had made him a wealthy man. With an estimated net worth of over $10 million, Jack was able to provide his family with a life of luxury, an extravagant home, private schools for his children, vacations at exclusive resorts, and a lifestyle others could only dream of. Despite the constant travel that kept him away for months at a time, Jack had always been a loving husband to his wife, Emily, and a devoted father to their children, Ava, 8, and Eli, 6. They were his world. Emily, at 35, was everything Jack could have asked for in a wife. Beautiful, with flowing auburn hair and piercing green eyes, she was the picture of grace and elegance. She could light up any room with her smile, and she was always there to greet him after his long trips. Jack often thought of her as the perfect partner, the one who held everything together while he worked tirelessly to provide for their family. Their life seemed flawless, the kind of life other couples envied. Emily, though a dedicated wife and mother, also had a career of her own. As a freelance event planner, she had the flexibility to manage her time, often working from home. But her job required her to frequently attend meetings, oversee events, and travel on occasion. The nature of her work was high profile, often involving large weddings, galas, and corporate parties that were the talk of the town. Her success in this field allowed her to live the life of luxury she and Jack enjoyed. Because of this, she had the perfect cover to engage in her extramarital activities. When Jack was first offered a higher position at his company, the added responsibility meant more travel. It also meant that Emily would be left alone for longer periods. After a discussion with her, they decided to hire a housekeeper. Jack, although reluctant, agreed. His only condition was that the housekeeper should be someone responsible, trustworthy, and discreet. Emily assured him it would be nothing more than a professional arrangement, a helping hand to maintain their home while he was away. Liam, a young man in his mid-20s with a quiet demeanor and an impeccable work ethic. Liam's presence in the home was initially welcomed by Jack, who saw him as the perfect addition to the household. He was quiet, polite, and kept to himself, working diligently and always ensuring that everything was spotless when Jack returned home. The house was well kept, the children were well behaved, and the house seemed cozy. Jack thought he had made the right choice. While Jack was away on business, Emily would lure Liam into something that started like an evening sacrifice and graduated to becoming a routine. Liam had resisted at first, but the enticing part was the offer Emily offered him. Emily and Liam found moments to be alone, long, stolen afternoons that blended into late evenings. In those quiet moments when Emily was alone or hosting parties, Liam, the housekeeper, slipped into her life in ways that went unnoticed. Now Emily had a secret, one that Jack would never have imagined in his worst nightmares. It started innocently enough, shared glasses of wine after a long day, intimate conversations about their lives and dreams. But it quickly spiraled into something deeper. Liam's role as the housekeeper was the perfect front. Jack had hired him under the pretext of needing someone to help maintain the home in his absence. But for Emily, Liam was much more than a hired hand. Their affair started with soft touches and glances, and as the months went by, their passion grew. On weekends when Jack was away, Emily and Liam would find themselves alone in the house, giving into their desires. Their intimacy became frequent, often behind closed doors, where they could be themselves without fear of being discovered. At first, Emily justified the affair as a result of her loneliness and Jack's long absences. But the attraction between her and Liam was undeniable. It wasn't long before their physical relationship became more frequent, and Emily grew increasingly obsessed with the thrill of their secret. But over time, Jack noticed subtle changes in Emily's behavior. She seemed more distracted when he was around, and oddly, more affectionate when he was gone. He didn't think much of it at first, attributing it to the stress of managing everything on her own while he was away. Yet an unsettling feeling began to creep into his mind, one he couldn't shake. Something about Liam's presence seemed to make Emily more on edge. Jack's instincts, which he had trusted in business for years, began to tell him that there was something more to the situation than met the eye. Jack couldn't place it, so he kept it from his mind. He also suggested that his wife should get for herself another maid. He didn't want to sound controlling, he just made a suggestion, unknown to him that Emily knew better. It was around this time that Emily introduced a new lie to Jack. After Liam's departure, Emily assured Jack that the housekeeper's departure was merely a result of a personality conflict. She explained that an agent was in search of another, a highly recommended replacement who would be more suited to the position. Jack, trusting his wife and wanting to believe in her explanation, accepted it without much thought. Emily's ability to fabricate the details of the story with such ease only added to the illusion of normalcy, convincing Jack that there was nothing untoward going on. The idea of an agent finding another maid seemed like a reasonable, even professional way to handle the situation. Little did Jack know that this agent was just another layer in the web of lies Emily had woven to cover her affair with Liam. Emily often found herself needing more capital to keep her business afloat, especially when unexpected costs arose. But this time, it wasn't about the business. This is where Jack, the ever-loving husband, came in. Despite Jack's frequent absences due to work, he had always supported Emily's dreams and ambitions. He believed in her talents as an event planner and did everything he could to ensure she had the resources to succeed. Emily, seeing an opportunity to fund her growing needs without raising any suspicion, approached Jack for help. She explained that she needed a significant sum of money to invest in the business, claiming that it was for a large upcoming event she had been hired to organize. Jack, always eager to see his wife succeed, gladly agreed to provide the funds. Jack knew that Emily had occasionally taken out personal loans in the past to cover business expenses, but this request seemed different. She told him the sum she needed was substantial, about $100,000, and Jack didn't hesitate to offer it to her. With his wealth and steady income from his managerial position, the amount wasn't a strain on the family's finances. What Jack didn't know, however, was that Emily had no intention of using the money for business purposes. Instead, the money was needed for a far more personal and secretive cause, one that had nothing to do with events or business expansion. The money was meant to fund Liam's trip out of the country for a critical procedure, gender-affirming surgery. Liam, who had kept his true identity hidden from Jack and the world, had confided in Emily about his desire to transition just so that there would be no trace of suspicion. For months, they had discussed the complexities and logistics of the procedure, and Emily had promised to help. The funds Jack had generously provided were quickly redirected to cover the expensive travel, medical expenses, and legal fees Liam needed to go through with his surgery. This would involve a series of consultations, surgeries, and post-operative care that required resources Emily simply didn't have at her disposal. Jack's willingness to support her business had unwittingly funded Liam's journey of transformation. The timing of the request had been perfect for Emily. Jack, always preoccupied with his work and trusting his wife completely, had no reason to question the legitimacy of her needs. He saw the sum as an investment in the business and thought nothing of it. Little did he know that the funds were being funneled towards something that not only supported Liam's medical transition, but also solidified her bond with Emily. The entire situation was a masterstroke of deception on Emily's part. She had been able to manipulate Jack into believing she was investing in the future of their family, while in reality the money was going toward the man she was in love with, someone who had become an inseparable part of her life, both personally and professionally. Liam's gender-affirming surgery was a step that would change his life forever, and Emily was determined to support him, even if it meant deceiving the man she had once promised to cherish. Jack's belief in her and his willingness to support her at any cost only fed the lies Emily had woven, supporting the very thing that would tear apart everything he thought he knew about his marriage and facilitate the final chapter of a relationship that had been built on deception and lies. Upon Benisha's arrival, her presence in the house reminded Jack too much of Liam. She was quiet, efficient, and polite, almost to the point of being too perfect. Her appearance was almost identical to Liam's, calm, professional, and disarming. She kept the house in impeccable condition, ensuring everything was always in place when Jack returned home. Yet there were moments when Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there was something too familiar about Benicia. There was an awkwardness in their interactions, almost as if they shared a secret, something that didn't fit the narrative of the professional maid Jack had been led to believe Benicia was. Emily's actions, however, were far from just financial deceit. The depths of her betrayal ran deeper than Jack could have ever imagined. As years passed, Jack's intuition continued to prick at him, but he did his best to dismiss the feelings. Benicia's voice sometimes lingered in his mind. There was something about it, something familiar, something unsettling. It was as if the same person, cloaked in a new identity. He could never quite put his finger on it, but he began to notice that whenever he was home, Emily would always steer clear of Benicia, as if hiding some private bond they shared. When he was home, everything felt serene and orderly. Yet when he left, there was a noticeable shift in the energy of the house. It was as if a quiet tension crept in, a calm undercurrent of something he couldn't name. It began to bother him more than he cared to admit, but he continued to bury his doubts. How could he have known? The children were happy, the house was maintained, and Emily was always kind and loving. What more could a man ask for? But one fateful night, everything changed. While Jack was away on business trips, Emily was at home with Benicia, their physical relationship growing more intense. The emotional and physical affair between the two women blossomed, and the need to cover up their secret became more urgent. Emily's focus on her business and her need to be seen as a successful, independent woman in the eyes of Jack and the town only served to strengthen the illusion. Emily, in her carelessness, made a terrible mistake. Drunk on wine, she recorded a voice note meant for Benicia. She had become so comfortable in their secret life that she no longer feared being discovered. She shared intimate, loving words with her lover, words meant only for Jack's ears. But Emily's intoxicated state led her to send the message not to Benicia, but to Jack's phone by accident. Jack returned early from a business trip, walking into a home that seemed quieter than usual. He reached for his phone and noticed a new voice message from Emily. He opened it with a sense of routine, expecting a quick update about the children or the house. But as soon as the message played, his heart dropped into his stomach. The message read, "Benicia, I can't wait to see you tonight. Jack's away again, and it's just you and me. I need you more than you know. You're everything to me, our little secret. Your deep stroke of intimacy and long-lasting bedtime are all I await." The words cut through Jack like a blade. His breath caught in his chest. It was as if the ground beneath him had been ripped away. He replayed the message over and over, hoping that his mind was misinterpreting it. But no, there it was, clear as day. His wife was having an affair with Benicia, the housemaid he had trusted and provided for. Jack stood frozen in the hallway, the weight of the revelation settling over him. His mind raced, but it was as if his body was paralyzed by the sheer betrayal. He immediately confronted Emily, demanding an explanation. She tried to feign surprise, but the panic in her eyes gave her away. She stammered and apologized, claiming it was a mistake, that it was just a passing affair that meant nothing. But Jack was no fool. The truth was now painfully clear. He couldn't stop himself from questioning everything. He needed more answers, more proof. He dashed into Benicia's room and saw a few of his photo albums as Liam. His confusion waxed stronger. He reached out for his box, and what he saw left him numb for a while. Liam's birth certificate, his papers during the trip, and pictures during the facial feminization surgery, FFS, and breast augmentation. It didn't take long for Jack to make the painful decision to have a DNA test done for Ava and Eli. He had always loved them as his own, but now the very foundation of his relationship with them felt like it had cracked. His anger led him to Benicia first. He found her alone in the kitchen preparing a meal for the children, but when she turned to face him, the shock in her eyes was clear. Jack didn't speak, he simply attacked. In a brutal fit of rage, he dismantled her, stripping away the facade of the housekeeper he had once trusted. Every blow he struck was fueled by the years of lies, the betrayals, and the crushing realization that the woman he had trusted had been deceiving him for so long. He pulled the knife from the kitchen and pushed it down her stomach, and Benicia fell to her face. He had locked up the wife, and none of them left home for a day, till the DNA result came. When the DNA test results came, the truth hit like a thunderclap. Ava and Eli were not his biological children. The devastating realization swept over him like a storm, drowning him in disbelief. These two children, the ones he had raised, the ones he had loved and provided for, they were the product of Emily and Benicia's affair. Consumed by rage, betrayal, and heartbreak, Jack's mind is shattered. The calm, loving man who had always been a pillar of stability was gone. In his place was a broken man, filled with fury and despair. But Jack's fury wasn't confined to Benicia alone. Emily tried to flee, but she was no match for Jack's rage. She begged for mercy, but Jack had no room left in his heart for her. In a fit of madness, he took her life in the most violent way imaginable, cutting her into over 50 pieces, a macabre representation of the trust she had shattered. The woman who had once been his wife, the one he had built a life with, was now reduced to a pile of broken fragments. In his grief-stricken madness, Jack also turned on the children. He couldn't look at them without seeing the lies that had been woven around him for so many years. In his mind, they were not his children. They were the symbols of the deception that had destroyed him. He fed them to his aggressive dogs, the innocent souls he had loved and cared for, in the cruelest act of vengeance. The police arrived hours later to find the carnage in what was once a beautiful, cozy home. The scene was beyond comprehension. A once vibrant home, now a tomb of betrayal and murder. Jack sat in the middle of the wreckage, numb, as if the events that had transpired were not real. His mind was blank, empty. The man who had always been calm and loving had been consumed by a storm of rage, and there was no going back. The town of Maplewood was shaken to its core. Jack, the man who had always been admired for his dedication and devotion to his family, had become a monster in the eyes of the world. His colleagues at work, who had once looked up to him, were left in shock. They couldn't reconcile the man they knew with the killer who had dismantled his family in such a brutal fashion. Family members, who had once seen Jack and Emily as the perfect couple, were left in disbelief, grappling with the truth of what had unfolded. As Jack was taken into custody, there was no sign of remorse. He had been hollowed out by the betrayal that had consumed him. The man who had loved his family with all his heart was gone, and in his place stood a broken shell, driven to unspeakable acts by a series of lies. The case would be remembered for years in Maplewood, not just as a tragedy, but as a chilling reminder of the dark consequences of deceit and betrayal. Jack Wilson, a man once loved and admired, was now a symbol of what can happen when trust is shattered beyond repair. Could you ever forgive someone who betrayed you in the most intimate ways, especially when the lies go so deep that even your children aren't who you thought they were? Is there ever an excuse for such an act of deception that could shatter a family? Where does trust end and manipulation begin? Could Jack have prevented the tragedy from unfolding? Can anyone truly rebuild their lives after all the devastating?